HR issues can kill you. One complaint against your company can turn your world upside down. And you spend way too much time dealing with HR when you should be spending your time on making a profit. You should talk to Bambi. With Bambi, get access to your own dedicated US-based HR manager starting at just $99 per month. They get to know you and your business while providing HR expertise and the personal touch you need and want. They're available by phone, email, and real-time chat, so onboarding and terminations run smoothly. Team members reach peak performance, and your business stays compliant with changing HR regulations. And with Bambi's HR Autopilot, you'll automate important HR practices like setting policies, training, and feedback. HR managers can easily cost $80,000 a year, but Bambi starts at $99 per month. Schedule your free conversation today to see how much Bambi can take off your plate. Go to Bambi.com right now and type in Accelerate under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Spelled BAM, BEE.com. Bambi.com. Type in Accelerate.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Welcome to Accelerate Your Business Growth with your host, Diane Helbig. Diane is a leading small business development and leadership coach, author, and speaker who is passionate about sharing valuable ideas, tips, and techniques with business professionals worldwide. Diane brings you the world's experts and gurus in all things business, whether it's sales, structure, social media, planning, or plateauing. Guests bring their expertise and energy to each episode. When growing your business is your focus, Accelerate Your Business Growth is the show to listen to. Got a topic or guest suggestion? Let Diane know. The goal is to make sure you have the information you need to move your business forward. Thanks for joining us. Settle in and enjoy.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Today's podcast is sponsored by Audible.com. You probably know that Audible.com is a leading provider of audiobooks. They have thousands of titles to choose from, but you may not know everything else that they offer. So we are providing you with a free trial. You can go to audibletrial.com/businessgrowth and explore on your own, see what's there. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Over the years, the Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast has continued to enjoy inclusion on lists of the best podcasts to listen to for business, for sales, leadership. We've really been fortunate to show up in an awful lot of places. And that is because of the guests. These are folks who have expertise in particular areas of business, and they join me to share that expertise with all of you. So you can get answers, you can get ideas, you can find things you can implement in your business so that you can have better results, be more successful, happier, and all of that good stuff. Today is no different. My guest today is Claire Chandler. Claire helps growing organizations attract and retain the right talent to accomplish their mission. She leverages over 25 years of experience in business leadership, human resources, and communications to boost leadership alignment and effectiveness. She holds a certificate in strategic HR leadership from Cornell, a master's degree from NJIT, and a bachelor's degree from Fairfield University. She is also the author of The Whirlpool Effect. Thanks so much for joining me today, Claire.
Thanks, Diane. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to start with, so we're talking about this thing that you call a builder's market. And so just to start off the bat, will you help us understand the distinction between a buyer's market and a builder's market, please?
Absolutely. So, the post-COVID, and I'm being optimistic to say the post-COVID market, right? Because we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. However COVID may coexist with us for a while, I think businesses are starting to emerge from their hibernations or their self-imposed isolation, et cetera. And part of what we are seeing, unfortunately, is rising unemployment. We have been very blessed, I think, with a very low, historically low unemployment rate pre-COVID, and now, of course, the unemployment is climbing as companies have had to make very difficult decisions, just to survive. Let alone come out of this stronger.
Yeah.
And so with the rising unemployment, a lot of companies look at that market of available talent, and they classify it as a buyer's market, right? The supply and demand kind of a thing. And I would challenge companies to shift their perspective toward that candidate pool as a builder's market. And the reason I say that is because, you can look at this situation that we are in and the economy that we are in right now as a buyer's market from the standpoint of renegotiating agreements with suppliers and vendors and partners and trying to, make your cash flow more efficient and your spending more efficient. And that's all well and good. When it comes to candidates, though, that you want to add to your team, the smart companies, the smart leaders are looking at this as a builder's market and saying, we're not just going to scoop up talent that's out there because the supply is so high. We are going to be that much more strategic about who we add to our team and make sure that each of those people is the right fit for where we are trying to go as an organization. So it's a very different lens through which to look at the unemployment market and the candidate market as from the eyes of a builder as opposed to a buyer.
I see. Okay, so is there a process then that they go through to figure out where they need to be adding or what they're looking for in the right talent?
Yes, absolutely. And so, every company that I work with, and COVID, the impact of COVID doesn't change my initial focus with any company I work with. We always start with getting really, really clear on what that company's mission is. Mm-hmm. And when I say mission, a lot of companies, their reflexive reaction is, oh, we've got that covered. We've got a mission statement out on our website, right? And a mission statement too often, unfortunately, is so far afield from a company's actual mission that companies forget what their purpose is, why they are in business to begin with, what they are all about, what they are looking to achieve long term. And so it is really important, especially coming out of the COVID impacted life as we know it, to revisit, reconnect, redefine, or craft from square one what your company's mission is. You have to get that right. I truly believe that the mission is the springboard for everything else. It's the filter through which you should be looking at your business decisions, your hiring decisions, your spending decisions. And so when we talk about that in the context of candidates and who to add, the clearer you are in your mission, the easier you can then say, okay, now that we know we're all aligned on what that mission is, at least from the top levels of leadership. Now let's take a fresh look at, are we structured the right way to achieve that mission? Do we have the right people in the right roles with the right skills and the right motivations, right? And so that clarity around mission is so fundamental, and it's so foundational to any business, regardless of the stage of its evolution, whether they are just starting up, they're transitioning from one phase to another in its evolution. That mission clarity should determine who you hire, where you hire, how you hire, and how you put those skills to use in your organization.
Okay, so then that feels to me like a couple things come to mind. The first one is that, oddly enough, this whole pandemic situation may be providing some companies with an opportunity to reframe, to say, maybe this was our mission, maybe we were clear on it, but here's where we want to go. Or maybe, we weren't, we had this thing up on the website, but this is really what our purpose and why we're here. And then it also sounds to me like not only are they defining what they're looking for in gaining talent, but that they're reevaluating the talent they have.
100% right. And so if we kind of break both of those down, the opportunity to reframe, I'm an eternal optimist. So when we're in a global pandemic, which no one has ever been through before. You have to harken back to, the great flu epidemic of 1918 for anything that came close, right? Yeah. But this is something that's truly a globally shared experience, a globally shared challenge. And you're absolutely right. It is now an opportunity for companies to reframe. Many companies, most companies, have had to make those difficult decisions of where to pare back, where to prune, not just employees, which was the unfortunate outcome of a lot of that, but where they had to scale back on, growth plans or spending or investment, et cetera. So it really is a great time to reframe your organization and say, we've been sort of just, moving along in a really good economy up until COVID, and didn't stop to reevaluate, are we on the right path? Do we have the right people? Do we have full buy-in to the mission? Is it the right mission? And therefore, do we have the right team to enable that mission? Are we serving the right customers to help advance our mission? So there is a huge opportunity to kind of reframe that. This sort of catastrophic event. I'm based in New Jersey, and Superstorm Sandy struck in 2012, and it had a similar type of impact, not on a global scale, obviously, but on a very deep scale in terms of wiping out businesses and homes and roads and the kind of life as we knew it. Those of us who were in the path, but it also was an opportunity to wipe the slate clean. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but in that way of, here's your opportunity to reframe, to rebuild, and to refocus. And to your point, the second part of what you highlighted is also very true. The clearer you are on your mission, and like you just highlighted, now is a great opportunity to get clear, and to sort of reintroduce yourself to that mission. The clearer you are on your mission, the easier it will be to see, what employees' passions and talents and skills connect with that mission and can advance it. And the flip side is, the clearer you are about your mission, the clearer you communicate it, the clearer you reinforce it, through both communication and actions, the more readily employees who don't connect with that mission will self-select out. Right. So, and that of course is not, there's no silver bullet, right? So it's not like, oh, so all we have to do is clarify our mission and all the bad seeds will walk out the door, right? It's of course never that simple, but the clearer you are in your convictions, right? The more clearly you communicate, you show what you will tolerate, what you will not tolerate. Some component of those employees will self-select out, and the others, it's going to be a lot easier for you to give them corrective feedback because their behavior, their performance, their skill set either aligns with where you're trying to take your company or it does not.
Yeah. Wow, it's so interesting because we're in such an interesting time. This is why, the conversation would be important anyway, because talent, it would have been a different conversation, right? When the economy was so good and unemployment was so low, we would have been having, potentially a different conversation about this. But,
right, that's right. Well, yeah. Right, because going into COVID, we were still on this, this mantra of the war for talent. Right. And so now it's like, oh, we've got plenty of people to choose from. You do and you don't, right? Because you don't want, you want the right talent. You don't want just the available talent. You want the right talent. And, one of my sort of soapbox statements is also the people that you have right now that, if your mission is not clear and you just took your employee population and you said, I'm going to put them into 3 buckets, right? A players, B players, and C players. Well, if you're not crystal clear on your mission, the people that you currently think are your superstars, your top performers, your A players, may in fact not be the A players once you clarify where you want to go. And vice versa, right? The ones that are kind of in the middle, the ones that are more of the marginalized, the disengaged, whatever, are they disengaged because they don't get it? Or they're disengaged because they don't get you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you don't know.
Right.
That's really interesting. Okay, talk to me some about onboarding and the role it plays in keeping good talent.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, onboarding of new people is going to be even more critical, and I'm going to come back to that. But here's another opportunity that the smart companies are going to seize, and they're starting to seize right now, which is to re-onboard every member of their organization. A lot of companies, right? So a lot of companies had a forced pivot to not showing up in an office every day, learning how to work remotely and still be productive, learning how to collaborate through technology. I'm actually finding with a lot of companies I talk to that they are seeing collaboration increase, as a matter of fact, even though people are remote. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, but the re-onboarding, here's a golden opportunity. Again, for if this type of a pandemic, this type of a situation wiped the slate clean in terms of it really forced you to scale back, become efficient, cut out what didn't work. Now you've got an opportunity to rebuild from the platform of your existing organization and say, welcome back, but welcome to the new company, right? This is our mission. Even if it's the same mission, even if you have reevaluated it and decided it stood the test of time, it weathered the storm, it's still going to be our mission. When's the last time you really introduced or connected that mission to the people that you have in your organization, the roles that they play, the contributions that they make to move the needle toward achieving that mission? So reboarding is an opportunity that smart organizations should not miss, right? And then, of course, in addition to that is the onboarding of anybody new. And, I realize there are a lot of companies that are struggling with vacancies right now, and there's this urgency to fill slots. And again, I would say to those organizations, listen, the work has to get done, and there are certain urgent hiring needs. but make sure that you do that very necessary first step of clarifying, who you are, what you're all about, why you exist. And it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but I can't emphasize that enough, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. I've worked with, companies where we can get together for one day and get that mission really nailed down so that it guides decisions, right? It doesn't have to set people back for weeks or months or a year or what have you, but it's such important foundational work before you add one more person to your team.
And it feels like it's so fun. I'm so glad you said it doesn't have to take a lot of time, because I think that's part of the reason people don't do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and the other thing too is we get tunnel vision, right? So even with all that's going on and the impact that the pandemic has had and everything, we can't see through our own forest as individuals, as entrepreneurs, as small businesses, as large businesses. The longer the leadership is in place, the easier it is just to sort of defend the status quo to the death, right? And it's hard to lift yourself out of that and look at it objectively, which is why a lot of companies do look for somebody like me, somebody like other people to come in from the outside that has no emotional attachment to your mission, but is deeply emotionally connected to the essential nature of having the right mission, right? But you can kind of pull that out of people. I have never worked with a company and developed a mission that I created for them. It's always about pulling it out of them and distilling, from what makes them great, what makes them successful, and what drives them forward, that are the crucial elements to a well-crafted, very clearly defined, understood, and embraced mission.
Right.
I'm going to take a quick sponsor break, and then I have some more questions for you. Accelerate Your Business Growth podcast is happy to be sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information. They have thousands of titles to choose from, as well as podcasts, Audible originals, guided meditations, and more. One of my favorite audiobooks is Everyone Deserves a Great Manager by Scott Miller. For me, I love being able to listen to it anywhere and across my devices without losing my place. And I think you will too. So visit audibletrial.com/businessgrowth to explore the variety of audiobooks and programs for yourself.
Okay. And it feels like a lot of how successful they are in this has to do with their culture, the company culture. So have you seen shifts in company culture since the pandemic?
I would have to say I've seen the amplification of culture as a result of the pandemic, in good ways and in bad ways, right? So if you're a company that, like I said before, we have been very fortunate that we have had a very stable, strong economy, for several years now. Yeah. So if this is the first, if there are companies that, businesses that are kind of listening to this and they're relatively young, such that this is really the first large scale crisis they've come up against, they have gone through a reckoning, right? And it's already happened because we've been going through this pandemic for months now, but they've sort of discovered very quickly, were they lucky or were they good? Right.
Yeah, right.
So, and it's not just the small companies that fall victim to that, or the young companies, the big companies, it could take a one leg out from under them. And so, I have seen companies that, for example, I've been working with a company that wanted to put in place a telecommuting policy. And they wanted to be able to shift to, people having flexible work arrangements and what's that going to look like. And they kept, the leadership at the top kept talking themselves out of implementing it. And this was, Q4 of last year. And they said, I don't know if we're ready. We need a lot of training. The managers don't know how to manage people remotely. There's a lot involved. Well, hello, COVID, right? So forced the implementation of the practice of working from home and being flexible and all of that. But because they were sort of in this decision paralysis, they were not ready with the policy. They were not ready with supporting their managers who, I have seen struggle the most, right? So it's not the top leadership that has struggled the most. It's not the individual contributors that have struggled the most through this pivot. It's the managers in the middle that have are still required to meet certain expectations, but now also have to manage their people without seeing them every day. And that requires a very special skill set. And so if the leadership at the top, isn't quite ready, this forced pivot didn't all of a sudden give them the skill set. It forced the move that they were reluctant to make. And it really shone a light on, where their decision-making is bogged down. I firmly, wholeheartedly believe that the biggest impact on a company's culture is the behavior of its leaders from the top down, right? A lot of people think, well, it's the employees who make the culture and it kind of bubbles up organically. It does and it doesn't, right? So it's really your employees are watching what gets incentivized, what gets rewarded, what gets tolerated, and they act accordingly. So if the senior leadership doesn't know how to make an effective decision, doesn't know how to make a decision that ties back to a mission, and doesn't really know what that mission is in the first place, which is the reason why their decision making is so bottlenecked, they're not going to be as agile and as versatile and as flexible coming through a crisis like this.
Right. And so then the employees sort of create their own way to move forward.
By necessity. Absolutely.
Right.
And, and the other interesting thing that happens is, I said that this pivot has more amplified culture than really changed it. I'm seeing some companies that are so pleasantly surprised at how much more efficient they have become because of the forced pivot, how much happier and more engaged and more productive their employees are, to the point where they're saying, we hadn't really thought we were ready to kind of switch or evolve to a sort of flexible working scenario. This has proven to us that we can do it, to the point where, we're not going to go back entirely to 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, you've got to be in the office. Whereas other companies are saying, I'm not convinced that this pivot to flexible working from home, et cetera, is making our employees more productive. In fact, I suspect, this is executive leaders talking, I suspect that they are not working as hard as they should be. And so that is an amplification of a culture that is not based on trust.
Yeah.
That is not based on empowerment. That is not based on, clear expectations. Because, my response to that was, well, you will be able to tell how productive they are by you've set expectations and they've met them in terms of, the outcomes you need them to achieve every day, every week, every month. So if you're fuzzy on what they're doing, then you weren't clear to begin with on what their role is.
Right.
And that's a problem that as a colleague of mine said last week, the fish stinks from the head, right?
Yeah.
So that's a problem that trickles down from the top, doesn't bubble up from the bottom.
Nope. So true. Oh my gosh. On so many levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Okay. You mentioned large companies before. And so, I'm curious about how these smaller companies can compete with the larger ones for good candidates in a time like this.
Right. It's a couple of things. So the new skill set that this pandemic has really underscored is agility and resilience, right? Those are from a company perspective, let alone an individual talent perspective. Those are going to be the two most sought after, business essential, mission critical skills going forward, and for a long time. I mean, people are saying, we're not going to fully rebound or recover from this COVID nightmare for, it depends on who you talk to, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? So those two core competencies of agility and resilience are going to be absolutely mission critical. So, smart companies of any size, at any point in their evolution, need to be looking for ways to increase the agility and the resilience of their workforce and their business processes, their organization in general, and look for ways to assess people that they are evaluating, to add to the team, the degree to which they can, that they can demonstrate agility and resilience. And there's ways to do that. I mean, I use some pretty powerful assessment tools with my clients to kind of, test for that, if you will. So those are going to be big. But, you asked, how does a small company, how does a growing company, how does a startup, how does a family-run company compete against the big guys for talent? And culture, going back to that, that's going to be what sells, right? The bigger companies that have very well-known, well-loved cultures are still going to be hard to beat. However, if you're looking through the lens of building by adding the right talent as opposed to the best talent, there's a distinct difference there, right? And so it's still going to come back to the only way you're going to know if you're hiring the right talent is not because they went to a certain school, have a certain number of years of experience, et cetera. It's because you've gotten much, much clearer on your mission than the other guys. And you know that your culture is sound because the leadership at the top is bought into the mission, lives the mission, uses that as the filter for making better decisions, more efficient decisions, setting performance expectations, reinforcing the right behavior, all of that. And that's what's going to impact a culture, and sort of seep into the culture in a positive way, such that the right employees stay, the wrong employees are filtered out, and your reputation as, a culture, a workplace where I can come in and maybe I've never heard of this company before, but at a smaller company, I have more access to the top leadership, right? There are way few layers of hierarchy, bureaucracy, and talent hoarding in a small company. So those are big advantages. And, the workforce that's coming in now, and the workforce that's, been sidelined into unemployment and looking for a new opportunity, that's what they're looking for now. They're looking for a company that they can belong to and believe in, not necessarily one that's so big that they can build a 35-year career there. So, to me, that's where the smaller companies can compete. If they are really, really locked into their own identity and their own direction, and then can, look for the talent that's going to augment that kind of culture, not the culture that they were trying to get rid of.
I see. So really, the best talent is really the talent that fits with your mission, your culture, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And, in certain, like I said, I said agility and resilience. Those are two things that you're going to want to make sure anyone you add into the business, can demonstrate and has some, has a little bit of grit and moxie, right? Yeah. If we're going to relabel those, it's grit and moxie, right? But you want to add people that can hit the ground running. And I don't mean that from the sense of a lot of employers want plug and play candidates. They want people that they can just sort of hire, set it and forget it, hand them a job description and say, I'll see you for your quarterly review.
Right.
That's not going to work anymore. Big company, small company, multinational, that doesn't work anymore. Employees want to see a link and want to feel a connection between what is important to them and what is important to the company. And the clearer they can see that what they do in their individual role and what they bring in terms of their unique talents contribute to forwarding and advancing that mission, that's when you're going to get employees who buy in, who are infectious because of their levels of happiness and engagement and productivity, and feeling like they're playing to their strengths. And wouldn't that be great that you get, rather than a toxic culture that develops over time with siloed leadership that is really incentivized and motivated by, individual achievement of whatever their division or their team is assigned to do. And instead of that, we make infectious a positive culture where everyone's playing to their strengths and, not everybody's best friends. That's never going to happen, but that they support each other and they see that they are working together toward a common goal.
Right. Right.
Let's make that kind of culture go viral, right?
Yep. Yep. Because it just makes it work so much easier for everybody.
And it makes leading that type of organization from the very top, even to the line managers, the people managers, so much easier. Leadership management, it's tough. It's not for everyone. And every leader I've ever spoken to has shared with me that at some point in their leadership or management ascension, they got to a point where they said, this is just not as fun as I thought it was going to be. Right. And it's I kind of liken it to, why did you go after a leadership position? Now, some people are forced into it, right? Some people are just really good individual contributors and they're advanced into management, et cetera. And then you've got these other two buckets of leaders who are ambitious or they're aspirational. And if you're an ambitious person, right, that it is your ambition to become a leader, you really have to check yourself and say, what is my true motivation? Is it the trappings of leadership, or is it the duty that I will have to mold and shape a culture and to help support and advance the careers of the people I'm responsible for? And ambitious leaders tend to follow the trappings, follow the money, if you will. The aspirational leaders, it's not that they've got rose-colored glasses on. It's not that they're naive that, leading people is going to be difficult because, hey, if we were managing robots, it would be a lot simpler, right? But humans are, like Forrest Gump says, or they're a box of chocolates, right? You never know what you're going to get. So, but the aspirational leaders say, I'm not trying to get into that role because I want the higher paycheck and the stock options and the power. I am after the impact. And so, the impact, the influence is really what drives an aspirational leader. And it's the power and the authority and the trappings that tend to motivate the ambitious leader. And so, again, if they have the biggest impact on the workplace culture under them, what is the leadership culture, the leadership behavior that you are reinforcing and rewarding? Because again, your employees are watching and they're going to, like they say with employee recognition, you want to reward and recognize the behavior you want to see repeated. So, which behavior best supports, contributes to, and advances your mission. That's what you want to incentivize. And that's how you want to advance leaders.
And there are so many leaders not doing that and not realizing that they're incentivizing the behavior they don't want.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And, and they don't always appreciate or understand the impact they have. I was speaking to a leader once after a meeting he had with his direct reports. And this was an executive leader. And his message did not go over well. And, I kind of lingered behind in the meeting and I saw that people were kind of, demotivated and felt a little bit devalued by what he said. And so I went in and I talked to him and I said, listen, I know this was not your intention, but the message you just delivered in there didn't really go over well. And his response was, I'm not responsible for how my message is received.
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
What?
100% he is. 100% he is. And when leaders have that mentality, these are the same leaders who will say, do what I say, not what I do. They're the same leaders who will say, I got to where I am without any sort of development, without any sort of, coaching. So, why would I support an investment in that for the company and the next layer of leadership? These are leaders, quite frankly, who are ambitious, not necessarily aspirational, and they just don't get it. But the problem is, if you've advanced into that leadership role and that's your mentality and that's what you project and that's what you reward, that's how a culture starts to, the tide turns toward the negative, because employees say, okay, I have to act like that if I ever want to get ahead in this company. And that's a real dividing line between, leaders who get it and leaders who don't.
Right. Wow. Okay. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Leadership, it's just a whole.
It's a mixed bag, and you see leadership, and then you describe some people that are in leadership roles, and you're like, I hope you're using air quotes when you call them a leader, because that doesn't sound like a leader. So, it depends on the company, right? So to come back to your really important question about how do small companies compete against the bigger companies, culture is going to win out. Mission is going to win out. And they have to be authentic, right? It can't just be, kind of going back to the mission statement concept. It can't be a facade. It can't be this sort of, Hollywood set of a Wild West town where there's just really the saloon and the general store are just propped up by 2x4s, because it's really only a two-dimensional, wall. It can't be a facade. It can't be disingenuous, because otherwise that's what you're going to attract, and that's what you're going to perpetuate, and that kind of a culture is going to implode. This world is not going to sustain businesses that operate like that anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the workforce really has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. That's
how many people do you know who start in a company, spend their entire career in that company, and retire and get the gold watch after 30, 40, 50 years. Those are unicorns now. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? You kind of want to refresh the pool now and then and get different ideas and different perspectives, and your culture is going to evolve. Your mission might evolve. So as you had highlighted before, the situation we're in right now is an opportunity to reframe. That's really what workforces are looking for. They're looking for ways to make an impact. They're looking for ways to grow. They certainly want to be compensated, fairly and all of that. I'm not saying money isn't going to matter to them as an incentive, but it doesn't outweigh, their ability to see a visible connection between what they bring, and how that affects the company in positive ways.
Right. Okay. So now talk to me some about technology, especially because the situation we're in, it's sort of been forced. But do you think, and I'll say, not just in the situation we're in, but overall, do you think it strengthens or hampers a company's ability to communicate and collaborate? You'd said before that some companies were surprised.
Yeah.
The level of collaboration. What do you think?
And again, some of that depends on the culture, right? Because if you have a culture of mistrust or trust is not strong, then the longer the employees are separated, and working remotely, the more that type of culture is going to disintegrate, unfortunately. But I haven't seen that to be very pervasive. I've seen more companies, kind of, like I said, like that they're pleasantly surprised at how the technology has, first of all, that by shifting to remote work, that the company didn't self-destruct, right? That it didn't implode. And in fact, employees are happier because you took away their commute. You took away the responsibility to punch in at 9 and punch out at 5. Most of the companies I've talked to have said our employees are actually working longer hours because they're kind of logging in or what have you a little bit earlier. Sure, they're taking a little bit more time, here and there during the day to feed their kids or check their homework or do errands or get a prescription or run to the store, whatever it is. But then they're logging on again after dinner and they're doing more work. And again, if you're evaluating their productivity, not by the number of hours they log, but by the outcomes they're producing, those companies have been pleasantly surprised. And, the other kind of pleasant surprise has been that this sort of, technology like Zoom, like Skype, like Microsoft Teams, WebEx, et cetera, have actually increased, I have seen in companies, it has increased the collaboration. And I think part of that is because we had kind of taken for granted working in the same space as other people, right? So it's like, well, I'll get around to that. I'll see them later when I walk down the hall and we'll work out this problem together. Well, now they're finding that working remotely, they're more efficient. There's more time. There's more distance from the day-to-day chit chat, right? And they're able to say, okay, I'm going to reach out to this colleague of mine. We're still going to chit chat a little bit because we're not just going to be, cold business owners and go, okay, what's the problem? How do we resolve it? But they're finding that they are reaching out to each other with more of a results-driven intent, right? So they're saying, hey, when you've got some time, let's hop on a Zoom call and let's work through this latest project in increased ways than they were doing before. I think what has taken a hit, however, is while communication is, still sort of made easy, made efficient through technology, a lot of leaders confuse communication with connection. And I think technology has given them a false sense of, conflating the two. So it has become much easier, even before COVID, to quote unquote communicate with your employees because you could dash out an email, you can send a text, you can hop on a quick call or a Zoom call or whatever. But the leaders are walking away from that saying, okay, I communicated with my team today. But they're not necessarily connecting, right? And so this phrase, two-way communication, it is a bit of a farce because communication really by its nature is one way, right? You've got one person who's sending a message, the other person's receiving it. Unless you're talking over each other, which is not good communication. So, right? So, but the difference is I can communicate with you and I can convey an expectation. But it doesn't become a connection until it resonates with you. You understand what I'm asking for. You have sought and received the clarity that you needed, and you see a way forward. So in other words, you see how that connects to, cool, this gives me an opportunity to play to my strengths, to try something new, to stretch and challenge myself, et cetera. So connection goes way, way deeper than communication. You can't have connection without communication, but you can have communication without connection. And I think a lot of leaders, are becoming a bit too over-reliant on technology and telling themselves that that's connection. Similar to we're all on Facebook and we think, wow, I've reconnected with all these people from like my grammar school and the first, street I ever lived on. But you're not really connected, right? We're just sort of posting things that we want the world to believe about us or to know about us, but we're not really connecting. Right. So, it's one of those things that, again, with leaders, there is a significant difference, and really effective leaders appreciate that difference.
And I would think, listening to that if they sought a dialogue instead of a communication, it could help them, make sure that they are connecting.
Right.
Because they can hear then, they can get the feedback, they can get input, they can confirm that whatever they are putting out there is actually being picked up. You're
absolutely right. The feedback loop that is often missing in communication is so essential. To confirm that you've got clarity, to confirm that there's understanding, and to be open-minded to feedback, because your employees may give you feedback that yes, you weren't expecting, but get you to see things from a different perspective.
Right.
We always talk a good game about, the value of diversity and inclusion is to, bring in other perspectives. But do we actually tap into that? And you don't tap into it if your communication is one way.
Yes, exactly. Wow. This is really so fascinating, and I appreciate the information. I think, as you and I said earlier, people have a real opportunity now, and hopefully they're taking advantage of it. But then after listening to this, really realizing what those opportunities are, and taking the time, because they potentially have it, to retool and reframe and all those things. So Claire, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure.
And I'd always like to thank the listeners, but before I do, speaking of the listeners, will you share with them, how they can find you, whatever you've got going on that they should know?
Yes, absolutely. The easiest way to connect with me is to go to clairechandler.net, and you can learn a little bit more about me and what I do. And if you want to reach out, there are easy ways for you to do that. So, and there are some cool resources on there that you can download and try out as well.
Cool. Okay. Thank you for that. And listeners, thank you. You are who we are doing this for. And especially in these crazy times, this can be things like this are very valuable. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, audible.com. Head on over to audibletrial.com/businessgrowth and sign up for the free trial. Take a look at the content that is there and find stuff that resonates with you and enjoy. As always, continue to prosper and be curious. And until we meet again on another episode of Accelerate Your Business Growth, goodbye and good day.
¿Por qué esta Coca-Cola de McDonald's sabe tan bien? ¿Será la máquina? ¿Será el popote o el hielo? O quizás soy yo.
No sé, Diego, pero vámonos, ¿no? El ¿por qué esto sabe tan bien deal? Un refresco de cualquier tamaño por $1, solo en el $1, $2, $3 menú de McDonald's. Precios y participación pueden variar, no se puede combinar con cualquier otra oferta o combo. Coca-Cola es una marca registrada de The Coca-Cola Company.
Me, but also you. The Pharaoh fast forwards his favorite foreign film, Powder Donut. Okay, what's my line?
The only line I see here on the script is get options based on your budget with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive.
Oh man, that's a tongue twister, huh? I'm sorry, I'm gonna need a few more minutes. Bulbous Walrus, the Bulbous Walrus.
The Name Your Price tool, only from Progressive.
The owl ran afoul of the comatose coxswain.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I want to tell you about my podcast called Can I Offer You Some Feedback? I'm a business consultant and executive coach with over 20 years experience in change management, leadership development, and naturally providing feedback to high performers. My podcast is for those of you who have a complicated relationship with feedback, whether giving, receiving, avoiding, or seeking. Feedback is essential for our development. In each episode, you'll hear from real people across industries with their ideas, perspectives, and best practices on feedback. I'll also be sharing business bites with you, simple explanations of organizational tools, management techniques, and leadership philosophies that will help you and your businesses thrive. You can listen to Can I Offer You Some Feedback on your favorite podcast app or learn more at evergreenpodcasts.com.